Sasha had always been somewhat otherworldly, or so his father would say. Yet, not only did Nikolai Sergeyevich adore his son, but he was also immensely proud of him. When Sasha's mother, Nikolai's wife, Nastia, was still alive, he often asked her, "Nastia, tell me, why is our Sasha so different? Neither you nor I have had anyone like that in our family." Nastia would laugh. "Kolya, why do you say he's otherworldly? Sasha is a perfectly modern boy. He does sports, and just because he prefers poetry and drawing to toy cars and guns doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. Not everyone has to be a warrior." Nikolai would sigh. "I was hoping he'd become my right-hand man." "Kolya, calm down. The 90s are over. Can't you run your business peacefully now, without all that?" "You say that, Nastia, and so do others who aren't in the thick of it, thinking the 90s are behind us. But the truth is, nothing's changed. It's just that everything's more discreet now." Kolya rarely talked about his work at home. He didn't want to burden Nastia. She knew he dealt with cars. His dealerships sold both new and used vehicles, but that was about all she knew. For Nikolai, it was essential that his beloved wife and son wanted for nothing. On Sasha's 15th birthday, Nastia felt unwell. Sasha was the first to notice something was wrong. He approached his mother. "Mom, you look pale. Are you okay?" "Yes, sweetheart, I'm fine. Just a little tired." "Mom, why did you even go through with all this? I would have been happier just staying with you and Dad. Maybe with Stuart too." "Sasha, you hardly celebrate your birthdays as it is. 15 is a milestone. And besides, it turns out you have quite a few friends. Go, everything's fine." Sasha went to join his friends, but not before approaching his father. "Dad, you should keep an eye on Mom." Nikolai was surprised and stared at his son. "In what way, Dad?" "The usual way. She looks pale and has a sheen of sweat on her forehead. She says she's fine, but I don't think so." Nikolai looked worriedly at Nastia. "You're right. I'll make her go rest. We'll manage things here without her." What scared Sasha most was not how his mother looked, but that she agreed to go rest. That was so unlike her. Later that evening, after the guests had left, her condition worsened, and Nikolai called an ambulance. Some disease with a complicated name consumed Nastia in just 3 months. For Sasha, it felt like the world had collapsed. He saw his father, who had always been unbreakable, shrink before his eyes. When Sasha found him drinking alone in his office in the evenings, he decided to talk to him. "Dad." "Yes, son, I'm listening." His father didn't look at him. He was ashamed, and that was already a good sign. "Dad, I know it's hard for you. I understand." Nikolai smirked and gestured toward his glass. "You mean this?" "Yes, I mean, if it helps you feel better, even just a little." Sasha sighed. "Then pour me a glass." Nikolai looked at him in surprise. "What? Have you lost your mind? Why not?" "Dad, you found a way to cope. But for me, I can't even talk to you." Nikolai stared at his glass for a while before dumping its contents into a potted ficus. Sasha froze, then said, "Mom would have killed you for that." He broke down, crying for the first time since her death. His father hugged him. "Go ahead and cry. It helps. I know it does." From that moment on, they became inseparable. After Nastia's death, they were no longer two halves of a whole but one complete unit. Sasha enrolled in a philology program while continuing to attend private art lessons, even though he had already completed art school. Sometimes, Nikolai grumbled, "Son, don't you want to become someone people fear? To have your own money? Don't get me wrong, Dad, but doesn't the thought of earning it yourself make you feel good? Dad, why does a person need a lot of money?" Sasha paused his painting, a work he had been working on for a month but hadn't yet shown his father. "What do you mean? Why? Money can buy everything. Absolutely everything." Nikolai was caught off guard by his usually calm son's persistence. "Well, yes, everything. Even health?" Nikolai took a deep breath. "I see where you're going. Yes, there are things money can't buy, but most things, it can." "Dad, if the most important things can't be bought, then why chase after money?" Nikolai jumped up and started pacing the room. "I don't understand why you talk like this. You can't mean it. You've grown up in luxury. Dad, admit it. If we didn't have all this but still had Mom, we wouldn't have been any less happy." "Yes, but that's different." "Sasha, you're wrong. What if I die and leave you with nothing? How would you live then?" "Dad, you're planning to die too early. And seriously, I'll live like everyone else. I'll find a job that leaves time for the things I love, and that'll be it. I'll live." Sasha understood that there was a chasm between him and his father during this conversation. but he had expressed his opinion, and really, there wasn't much to say. His father already knew everything. And what? You wouldn't even be upset if I left you nothing in my will? No, that would mean you left it to someone who truly needed it. You know, Dad, I had a childhood dream. I wanted us to live in some remote village, where there'd be no business partners or deals, where it would just be you, me, and Mom. Nikolai looked intently at his son. You're still strange, Sasha. Nothing seems to interest you. Why, Dad? There are plenty of things I find fascinating. Painting, for example, creating something that will always stay with you, like this. Sasha turned the painting toward Nikolai. His father gasped and stepped closer. Nastia, so joyful, so beautiful, as if she were alive. Exactly, Dad. We can look at Mom and think of her as alive. It doesn't matter that she's no longer with us. She'll always be with us. Maybe you're right, but you have to admit, living without financial struggles isn't bad at all. Sasha smiled. I'll agree with that, Dad. A year went by. Nikolai's business was going so well that it started to feel unsettling, and not without reason. Nikolai Sergeyevich, are you heading home? He flinched and looked at his secretary. Rita had been with him for about 5 years. Their relationship wasn't purely professional, and Nikolai knew that if he suggested it, Rita would follow him to the ends of the earth, not for his money, but out of genuine affection. He couldn't fully understand this, just as he struggled to grasp his son's worldview. I'm planning to. In theory, Rita should have left, but she decisively walked into his office and sat down across from him. Kolya, tell me, what's going on? Tired. He smiled. What do you mean? You've changed. Something's happening. It's a different time now. He gave her a sad smile. Rita, I'd like you to leave for a while. There's an envelope in your safe. It contains some instructions for you and a plane ticket. She shook her head. I'm not going anywhere. You will, Rita, because your presence ties my hands. You're a smart woman. You understand perfectly well. She sat in silence for a while, then nodded. All right, Kolya, when should I leave? Honestly, you should have left yesterday, but your flight is tomorrow. Exhausted, he rubbed his eyes. Rita, it's necessary. She stood up. I understand. Kolya, Rita, go. When this is over, we'll talk. She quietly left, closing the door behind her. Sasha was waiting for his father. It was already past midnight, but Nikolai hadn't come home. That had become the norm lately. His father had grown nervous, barely spending any time at home. Sasha knew he was in trouble, but they hadn't had a chance to talk. This morning, Sasha had noticed that his father was carrying a gun. That meant the situation was even worse than he had imagined. He wanted to tell his father that, even though he wasn't a warrior, he would stand by his side if needed. The clock struck 2. His father was unusually late tonight. Sasha turned on the TV to distract himself and froze. The news was on. A well-known businessman has been killed in an explosion in his own car. Sasha sank to the floor as he recognized his father's car engulfed in flames on the screen. Rita arrived the next day. Sasha, how could this happen? I don't know. Something had been going on, but my father would never tell me. He was under a lot of pressure. Your father sensed something. A tear rolled down Rita's cheek, and Sasha couldn't help but think that she was grieving no less than he was. Strange things began happening almost immediately after the funeral. It turned out that Nikolai had sold his company just 3 days before his death. No one knew about it. His deputy, a close family friend, was furious and repeatedly asked Sasha where Nikolai had put the money. I don't know. I didn't even know he'd sold the company. A month later, it was revealed that Nikolai had withdrawn all his money from his accounts. The family friend visited again, carefully trying to find out if Nikolai had a mistress. The third time the family friend appeared was at the reading of the will. He sat there, staring intently at Sasha. When the notary announced that all Sasha had inherited was an old house in a remote village, a house he didn't even know existed, and nothing else, the friend cursed and left. Sasha sighed. Well, he could manage in the village too. The new owners of the family home, to their credit, didn't kick Sasha out. They didn't even make themselves known until the will was read. They gave him time to gather everything he needed. The next day, Sasha boarded a train. He walked through the village, and though his heart was heavy, he felt a strange calm. When he finally found the house, dusk had already fallen. Sasha wearily set down his suitcase. The rest of his belongings were still in storage. He checked the address, then the photo. There was no doubt this was the house. Then why was there a light on inside? Could squatters have moved in? Cautiously, Sasha climbed over the fence. He noted a decent car in the yard, something that clearly couldn't belong to squatters. He peeked through the window, and darkness slowly enveloped him. He came to when someone was shaking him vigorously. Sasha! Sasha! Then a whole bucket of water was poured on his face, snapping him awake instantly. He opened his eyes, saw the person in front of him, and immediately wanted to lose consciousness again. But the man spoke in his father's voice. Sasha, don't be scared. I'm not a ghost. I'm real. Sasha barely managed to stay conscious. You're dead. I buried you myself. Nikolai helped his son to his feet. Well, you buried someone's remains, not me. Come inside. I'll explain everything. Wait. Sasha waved his hand, then staggered so much that Nikolai barely caught him. You can't be my father. Nikolai asked. Why not? Sasha gave him a strange look. I don't know. What did Mom call me when she was angry or scolding me? Nikolai smiled. Carlson. Dad. It's really you. Sasha collapsed into his father's arms and cried. And at that moment, he didn't feel ashamed to cry, even though he was already 23. They sat in the yard, drinking tea. That's when I decided not to wait until someone killed me. I killed myself first. I sold everything, transferred the money to someone else, myself, actually, and disappeared. But Dad, what if they had found out? They wouldn't have found out. Who do you think would come looking for me here? It's the middle of nowhere. By the way, it took some effort to find this house. After our conversation, I imagined it to be just like this. I can still do business here, start a farming venture. No one will find me, and no one will bother me. Sasha smiled contentedly. It was just like his dream, except for one thing. Mom wasn't there. His father should remarry or something. He wasn't that old yet. Hello. Nikolai and Sasha turned sharply. Rita was standing at the gate, pale as a ghost. I'm sorry. I came after Sasha, afraid he wouldn't manage on his own here. I wanted to offer him my apartment. There's plenty of space. But here, excuse me. She turned and walked back out the gate. Sasha looked at his father. And why are you sitting here? She's about to leave. The man dashed after Rita. They talked for so long that Sasha had time to doze off. Sasha, he startled awake, looking at his flustered father and Rita, who was practically radiating irritation. Sasha, we've decided to get married. Rita huffed. Not we. You decided. Sasha smiled. About time. They both fell silent, staring at him in surprise. What? You're not against it? Are you kidding me? I'm all for it. Today's the happiest day of my life. And to think people say you can't bring back those who've been taken by the heavens. You can, Sasha said, smiling warmly, even if it's not everyone.